Okay, we want to talk about fonts within Vizrt T5, and Vizrt T5 now has a whole new way of working with fonts within the user interface. And first, what we need to talk about is the font manager. And to access it, what we can do is click on our workspaces and default here, and we'll go into the available docs, and there is a new window here called font management. We're going to click on that. It's basically made up of three parts here: a browse, import, and convert. So first, we are in the top left button here at the browse, and it shows us all of the different fonts that we have available for us within the new render mode within Vizrt T. So we are in the scene, we are in the Viz Engine renderer, not the classic mode, and these are all the fonts that we have available to us. We can also import fonts from this font manager here. So if we click on this little button on the left column, we can now import fonts, and two ways that we can do it is we can drag fonts on here, or we can click this little import button to bring up a window. If we want to drag fonts in there, we just need to bring up a new window, and here we have our fonts folder selected here, and we can just choose a font that we want, and we can slide that right into the window there. We'll minimize this, and here it's telling you to be imported, and we just need to click this little button here, and now that will import that font. What's more, we have a convert file over here. So if we had an old classic font within our system and we want to convert it to a new font to work within our Vizrt T5 render mode, we can do that. And we just need to right click and we can convert to font file. And once we do that, you can see now it takes it from a classic font to a font face here. Now once we have some fonts that are available to us to work within Vizrt T5, we can actually drag a font to our scene tree, and this is a little bit different now too within Vizrt T5. So what we need to do is navigate to our geometry plugins, and here it is, our first one here, and we need to slide this text up into our scene tree. Notice we don't see anything within our scene editor, so we're going to click on our text, and what we're going to do is come up here. First, we'll need to select our font. So we have basic styling here. We're going to select that. Now we have a drop down. So we're going to come into our drop down here, and you can see it kind of gives you a preview of what some of these fonts look like. So we're going to click on that one, and then we'll come up into our text box here, and we're just going to type a couple of words. So again, we can come into our scene editor window and drag things around just by clicking and dragging. What's more, since we're specifically working with fonts, we can double click on here and now engage the inline text editor and highlight it as well. So within our settings on the property windows here, what we have, our first drop down here are characters, and again we have a drop down here that we can choose different settings, and the way that it works is that if you just need a special character, you can drag that up into your scene tree, and there it adds it. So I'm going to highlight my text here. As we mentioned, our font face here, and we can change that at any time since it is highlighted. If we go over and change that to Helvetica, we also have a drop down here for variations of that font if there are any associated with it. If you needed to bring up the font manager, you can click on this little icon to the far right, and it will show font preview. So if we turn that little box off, there's no font preview, but if we turn it back on, there will now be a font preview, and it kind of shows you what the font will look like. We can also access open the font manager from there as well. So since our text is highlighted here, we can change the size of it right through the font size. We also have an effect here that we can turn on, the subscript effect or the underline if you need an underline. There's also the color that we can now adjust. So we just need to select a color by using the HSV, RGB, the hex codes, or the sliders that we can choose the color. Now within the layout, we have an alignment. So we have a left, center, right, and then we have a vertical alignment as well. There's a wrapping here. There's a wrapping contained right within this text box now, and it's off by default, but we can wrap by space, we can wrap by word, or we can wrap by any. Now as you can see, when we change that, ours went away because we need to set up our text box, and as we widen this width, you can see our letters or words start to come back, and as we advance or increase the height, you can see our words come back. And you can see since we have the bounding box on and we're adjusting this text box, we get a new orange box here which will guide us in selecting or making the right size bounding box for our text. So we have an orientation here. We have a choice of horizontal or vertical that you can choose, and a script direction, whether the text is going to type on from left to right or right to left. So since we do have everything highlighted within our editor here, now we can use our percentage here to adjust our line and our relative and absolute line height right here. There's an advanced styling. We have a percentage here, so we can increase or decrease our letter spacing in between each one. We have a relative and an absolute that we can use. Now there's also an automatic font size down here. This allows the text to auto scale into a text box size, kind of like our auto scale plugin in the classic render mode. And we have an option for the minimum font size that we can adjust and a maximum font size that we can adjust for that too. Now I'm going to turn the underline on because we have underline mode down here, and when there's other things that we can do with it once it's on. So we have a relative thickness and an absolute thickness that we can use, and then other options for skip mode. So we have a none and all spaces, or a continuation between a split and a join. I'm going to slide back up and turn the underline off, and then come back down to our last option here, which is our rendering. So as I turn on my rendering, we have two choices, razor and geometry. Razor is best for 2D graphics, such as making lower thirds and full page graphics. However, if you need to do AR objects or something 3D, you might want to use geometry. And notice that when we change between geometry and razor, this little button or the box below it changes as well. So we're on razor, and it gives you a couple of settings here. You can have the option to draw it as a texture, and then once we change it over to geometry, we get another option here. So we open up geometry, and now this is where we can add some extrusion to the text right within the text editor itself. We no longer need the extrude plugin like we did in the classic mode. Once we have the extrusion enabled, we have again our different bevels here that we can choose, and our extrusion depth, our bevel detail, and shading detail. Since it is a thin font, it may be difficult to see the extrusion, so we can come up and change a font into something else, and now we're able to see that extrusion just a little bit better. Now one thing we need to take into effect too with our fonts is that our color here. So if you do want to use some type of material, and we could use within the render mode we are using, we could use the MA or the MD. And if we wanted to use one of these MD materials on our text, we can slide that on and can see that it's going to change that. However, it is taking into account this color, so we may change that back to white if you aren't seeing the results that you wanted. Now if we drag that to the trash for a moment and we highlight this text again, we can highlight certain areas of the text and change that color in particular of that text as well.